before I start this review, I just wanted to give a quick update of what's been going on since I've been gone. So, as I've discussed previously in my last vlog I did with my Annabelle review, I went on vacation with my parents to Orange Beach, Alabama, where I basically was out for a whole week and I was taking some leisure time from work and just having some relaxation to spend time with my family and just to enjoy, outside of, just to enjoy the little things in life. And I had a great time, and I didn't get quite burned up like I thought I would get, so I came back, and if you see me now, I'm wearing my Orange Beach, Alabama t-shirt, and I got this this bone necklace, or I think it's a bone, I'm not too sure, but yeah, I had a great time, and so I'm really happy to be back and doing more movie reviews again, because while I was out on vacation, me and my mom got a chance to finally go watch The Dark Tower while I was down there. And so this is now a late review of the film that's been out for quite a while. So here's my review of The Dark Tower. The Dark Tower is directed by Nikolaj Arcel, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, and stars Idris Elba, Matthew McConaughey, and Tom Taylor. The movie is about a young boy named Jake Chambers who is having recurring dreams about this parallel dimension that's called the Midworld that he has dreams about, in which a sinister sorcerer by the name of Walter is trying to destroy this dark tower that could lead to the end of humanity of our world. And as he is starting to dream more about these things, he starts to notice some unusual things happen in the real world, and then he finds a gateway, a portal that transports him to the Midworld that he was having dreams of, where there he discovers that there's a gunslinger named Roland who is basically trying to get revenge on Walter the sorcerer, and also helps Jake along his way to try to save both of their worlds from falling apart. Now, a little backstory. Now, this film is based on a series of epic stories, epic novels that are by Stephen King, which tell the tale of the famous gunslinger Roland, who goes through these different dimensions and has to stop the forces of evil. Now, this film has been in development for a long time, in the last 10 years, and actually went through a couple other directors before Arcel took over. The original directors they had in mind were J.J. Abrams and Ron Howard, and I'm actually kind of curious what they probably would have brought to the table if they would have stuck by with the movie, because it seems like with this movie that they had so many ideas going for it that you can kind of tell that it was a movie that seemed like they didn't really know what they probably wanted to do with it, because in the stories, Roland is a gunslinger who comes across these different dimensions, and in the books, from what I've heard, they actually have references to Stephen King's other books and novels, including It, The Shining, and other things like that. And it actually got me curious, because I'm actually really a big Stephen King fan, and I've always been wanting to read some of his books, but I haven't had the time to read any of them. I own 3 of them that I've showed previously. Right now I'm reading It, which I'm about 420 pages in, and I'm trying to catch up as soon as I can for the new movie coming out. But I've always admired Stephen King as a writer, and I always feel like a lot of his films that come out that are based on his works, I'm always really interested in, because no matter how good or bad they are, they really pique my interest based on either the horror aspects of it or the different genres that they pull together that are based on his works, and that come to mind. And there's been a lot of great movies that I've enjoyed that Stephen King's novels have been turned into films, including The Shining, which I know is not really a good adaptation, but as a film it's still really great. And there's also Stand By Me, Green Mile, 1408, which was probably the last great one, along with The Mist. So it's been about 10 years actually since I've last seen a great Stephen King film. And the last Stephen King movie I watched, Cell, was pretty bad, and that was my worst movie of last year. So with this one, it got me really interested, because for the last year I've been looking forward to this, because I really like the whole idea of a gunslinger having to go through these different worlds and stuff, and the idea of them doing like a kind of a parallel universe that kind of mixes like other Stephen King stories in the books of the Dark Tower, really makes you wonder what they could do with the film. And this movie was meant to appeal to hardcore fans of the books as a way of basically being canon with the novels, because the movie is actually a sequel to the book series, where right when the books end, this film actually begins. So that idea, I feel like, can really work if it's done right. And so it really got me hyped based on the trailers alone and the way that they also had the cast set up. And I'll tell you right now that while this movie is definitely flawed, it is certainly not as bad as what some have made it out to be. So here are my pros. I really enjoyed Idris Elba as Roland. I thought that he really captured a lot of the nuanced performance of Roland in the way that he's also, carrying his revolvers and having to help Jake throughout the movie, and having to basically learn, when he comes to our world, having to basically learn more about our world and in the different ways that he has to learn to adjust to certain things. It really made me smile throughout, and he is very reserved in a lot of his performance, and I always get a kick out of Idris Elba every time he's in a movie, so he was perfectly cast as Roland, and I think that he really shines in this one. I also like the boy too, the kid who plays Jake. I think his name is Tom Taylor. Yeah, he was great too. He is kind of like the every person of the story, where he's basically the audience kind of character, where when he goes to the midworld, he's actually trying to ask questions that the audience would also be asking too, like, how is all this happening? Where is this all taking place? What's causing this Dark Tower and things like that? He's basically the someone that the audience can kind of relate to, and I really I enjoy his character. And there's also a nice, not gonna spoil anything, but there is something that's really interesting about him as the film goes on later that I actually really enjoy too. And I also like the chemistry between him and Roland. I thought that they had these little small funny moments that are pretty funny, that worked well together with the way that they're having to learn things about their own world, and it made me smile throughout the film, that I just got a kick out of it. The action scenes are really great too, especially the way that they use like these creative shots where when the action scenes happen, you see Roland actually using his revolvers. They actually use these cool, badass shootout scenes where when he shoots his guns, his guns, they go into like these different directions, and I thought those were pretty neat with some of the fight scenes they do. And there's even other times where they have it to where Roland has to focus on the best that he can to try to shoot his enemies, and he does like this cool, like, I think it's a power that he has where he's trying to focus in on his enemies, and you see the bullets slowly going into the enemy's head, like you see in the trailer. So I really enjoyed the way the shootout scenes worked in this movie quite well. Another element that I really enjoyed was I liked the way that we see little nods from other Stephen King stories that are in this movie. I'm not going to spoil what they are, but there are some neat little references that you get from other Stephen King movies and stories that I thought was very fascinating with the way they kind of wrapped around it, or that they kind of used throughout the film. So I enjoyed those little aspects that they put in there. Now, before I get to my cons, there is one thing I will also say. I am kind of hit and miss with Matthew McConaughey in this movie. I like him on a performance level in this one, but it's really hard to describe because his performance in this film is kind of weird. Like, I like him in this weird, like, unintentionally hilarious kind of way, where every scene when he's trying to be intimidating, it comes across like the dialogue was so, like, unintentionally hilarious that it feels like he was in a completely different movie. And I know that I think some people might be thrown off by this, because from what I've heard, there are people that that find that some of the dialogue and some aspect of his performance are very cringeworthy, and I can probably see that, because the dialogue they give him in some parts where he's doing like his witty comeback lines, I can see could probably be cringeworthy to some, but for some reason I was just laughing at it because it was just so. I guess it was meant to be that so bad it's kind of funny kind of way that it actually kind of made me like smile throughout. And I think those scenes work best compared to the other scenes when he is trying to be straight intimidating. because I feel like the direction was like tonally off in some parts with them. So it's kind of hard to really describe McConaughey's part in this movie because I love him so much as an actor, but his performance is like, part of it's unintentionally hilarious, and then the other part of it is just like kind of misdirected in some parts. So it's a hit and miss type of role, if you will, which not something I really say in a lot of these type of movies. So I will say it's a kind of a positive, but at the same time it's like near miss, so to speak. Now here's where I basically get to my cons. Now I realize that the film is trying to be a straight sequel to the book series, and I've never read any of the books, but from a story perspective, I did feel like this was very rushed. I did feel like we were basically thrown inside this world, and we didn't really get any history whatsoever with the way that the Midworld was set up, and other than like a brief text at the beginning, we don't really get much history surrounding the characters or anything like that. We're basically thrown in there, and we're supposed to already assume who these characters are and where they go throughout the story. Now, from what I've heard from some fans of the book, that is very unfaithful to the source material, because I know I've heard a lot of fans from the books were thrown off by that because they felt like they changed a lot of aspects of the books with that regard. So it seems like, even from what I'm looking at, the way, if you're even a hardcore fan of the books, you might even be thrown off by it if you've actually read the novels and you're picking up where the story leaves off in the movie. So I would probably be disappointed too if I was reading these books, but just from a movie perspective, I feel like the film would probably work better if it was done as a TV series to kind of get us more invested with the characters themselves. Because I am aware that the film is trying to have a TV series later come out to basically be set before the story takes place, but I think that they should have done that first to that way to get us introduced to this world that they've created. Because the lack of history and the way that the story is trying to build upon everything that's happening really surrounds a lot of the problem, because when you're just thrown into this environment, you're into this setting, it doesn't hold up, it doesn't work well, because you're not really feeling anything for the characters. In fact, there's some other characters in the film that they later introduce too that are supposed to have a big impact, but we don't really know who they are unless you probably read the books or something. And that's where I think the problem lies, is that the film doesn't know if it's trying to, I feel like the film is trying too hard to be pleasing to the hardcore fans, and they're not like giving us an overall cohesive story. So that's where I feel like there was the lack of that problem right there. So I will say that the story I did find could have been a lot better than what they could have went with. But it was to be expected, so it didn't really throw me off, because I knew going into that was one of the main issues with the movie. So with that regard, I will say that while I thought the movie was alright, I did feel like it also felt like it was just a standard action film. It seemed like there was a lot more potential where the Dark Tower should have been at than what we got instead. So with that being said, there's more I could go into detail, but I'm trying not to go into any spoilers. I'm going to give the Dark Tower a 6 out of 10. It was disappointing, but I mean, it could have been probably a lot worse if I probably read the books. So with that, for those of you who have watched The Dark Tower, what did you guys think of it? I'm actually kind of curious. For those of you who have read also the books, let me know in the comments of what you thought about it. And if you like what you see here, you can also feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. And you can also check out some of my other reviews on here. And I'm looking forward to the next Stephen King film. That's probably the next Stephen King film coming out in September. That will hopefully be the better movie of this year of Stephen King related works. And I'll be seeing you in my next review coming up soon. So I'll catch you guys later.